Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Have At It. This is episode 109. My name is Ben Cornett. How is everybody doing tonight? It is Friday, December 5th, 2025. And yes, for the first time in a while, I've done two shows in a 2 week span. Now, last week was the first time I came back on the air in like over 6 weeks. So it was a lot of stuff going on. Behind the scenes, personally, professionally. Just didn't have the time. So I do have the time now. And I got to tell you, it's been quite a week, man. We had a great NFL game last night, Detroit and Dallas. Detroit wins that game. So they, stay alive in the playoff race. Meanwhile, Dallas, tough loss. It was a game they pretty much had to win, but I don't think completely their playoff hopes aren't completely dead, but they definitely need a lot of help at this point. As far as the wild card, I don't really see them. They're just too far behind. The Niners, I think, are like 9-4 right now. They're like the seventh seed, so it'd be very difficult for this team and the Cowboys to catch up with them. They probably have a better shot going after the Eagles in their division. Philly's not been playing the best football, so there's a chance, and they got to play the Chargers on Monday Night Football, which is a big game, for both the Eagles and Chargers. Especially the Eagles, who are down with Jalen Carter being out for that game, so they lose somebody on defense, probably their best defensive player. So that's tough. But I'm probably going to go Eagles still in this game because the Chargers, they have a bunch of injuries as well. They're got a lot of mixing around with the offensive line. Justin Herbert may be playing, he may not be. We don't know yet. It could be Trey Lance. So who knows? But that's an important game as well. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. Now, stuff I haven't really talked about much on this show on Have At It, but I think it's very important because again, this is a show about not just about sports. I like to talk about other stuff as well, but pretty much most of the time, especially this time of year, we talk about the NFL, we talk about college football. I mean, because it's that time of year, and that's what people are, watching. So, but I want to get this out of the way with, you know, Netflix bought out Warner Brothers. I think it's a very important topic to talk about because I know, like myself, I'm sure everybody who watches this show, everybody knows me or friends with me on social media have Netflix, and um, this is a big deal, you know, acquiring Warner Bros. Now, the deal's not done yet. It's got to go through regulations and government approval first. It's not something that's just gonna, happen overnight. Um, you know, it's gonna have to go through hurdles. So it's gonna take a while, but mainly what Netflix is doing is buying. They're not gonna buy everything from Warner Brothers Discovery. What they're interested in, if you haven't read already, they're interested in the library, the Warner Brothers movie catalog, TV shows, but not like the channels you're in, not like TBS, TNT, you know, True TV, stuff like that, that is under the Warner Brothers umbrella currently. But Netflix is one in the library now. Paramount Plus, Paramount Skydance was considered the favorite. Comcast got involved. Now Paramount Skydance is apparently now going to try to do what they call a hostile bid to try and you know kind of get in the way of Netflix buying Warner Brothers Discovery, this entity. And I heard a lot of people not really happy with the move. They feel like it's Netflix is going to just kind of put it in their own spin. They're gonna not Warner Brothers has movies going to the theaters, and they feel like some people feel like Netflix is going to take that away. That's going to go straight to Netflix. Any movie that's new movie that Warner Brothers produces, from here on out, it's going to go to Netflix, right away, and not the movie theaters. And you have actors, producers that are upset that that could happen, and they sent a strong anonymous letter to uh, Netflix and Warner Brothers, um, because they think it could kill the movie theater industry. Well, my thought on that is, like, the movie theater industry it's fading away. It's still around, but you know, it's been dying a slow death, in my opinion. COVID sped things up with it. Back in 2020, we had the outbreak. Theaters were closed, everything. So eventually, you know, people stopped going to the movies so much. They want to watch the movies in the comfort of their own home. And now I'll be honest with you, I'm one of those guys. I don't like to go out. Look, I'm 45. Okay. And I'm not going to pay $15 to go see a movie, you know, and that's just to get in and watch the movie. That doesn't count for, you know, drinks, popcorn, candy, whatever you get at the movie theater to enjoy while you're watching the movie. Um, so, the movie theater experience is just, to me, dying a slow death. Now, it's not going to completely go away. There'll still be movies being shown at theaters, but it's not as popular as it used to be. People want to stay home. A lot of it's financial, and a lot of it's more convenient. You can watch a movie now. There's nothing like watching a movie in a theater, especially if it's a movie like an action movie or whatever genre you like. But nowadays with 4K TVs, you can get them for like 300-400 bucks at your Walmart or Target or wherever you get your Best Buy, whatever. You can get a great picture on it, and it just feels like you're at the movies anyway. So to me, I feel like this whole it's going to kill the movie theater experience. It's going to kill you know people not making money off the actors and actresses. I don't think so, in my opinion, because again, it's people have stopped going to the theaters for a while. It's already slowing down. So I don't buy that excuse. That's just my opinion. So with Netflix buying Warner Brothers, you know, to me, let's see what happens. Maybe it'll turn out really good. We just have to wait and see. I mean, they're the number one next to YouTube and Google. They're the top streaming services in the world. So Warner Brothers was losing billions of dollars. They just were. And they wanted to sell it, like, in hell, Netflix is even, if something were to happen where Warner Brother backs out of the deal, like Netflix is even willing to pay like a $5 billion exit fee. Netflix is even going to pay for their debt, which I don't know exactly how much that is, but they're willing, and that's how much money Netflix has. I mean, they own the streaming market across the globe. Now, again, these it's got to go through regulations both in the US and abroad, to get this approved. So it's not a done deal yet, but they are now negotiating with Warner Brothers Discovery. My feeling is there may be some hurdles, but it'll eventually get taken care of, and Netflix should have the Warner Brothers catalog library within the next year to 18 months, in my opinion. So, but it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. You think about the Warner Brothers catalog, the library that they have goes all the way back 100 years. They also have DC Comics. like Game of Thrones, the Harry Potter catalog. So now more people get to, see that on Netflix. And of course, the prices are going to go up. That's no surprise. It'll happen, which is, that's going to be common, especially when, you're going to get a huge catalog, coming on the platform. There will be more money that needs to be put into it. So don't be surprised if you get the email that says your Netflix subscription is going to go up, But I've been a Netflix guy for over a decade. I have no problem with it. I'll pay it, because that's the one service I watch the most is Netflix. So yeah, that's just my opinion on it. Tell me what you guys think. Do you like Netflix having Warner Brothers in there and eventually taking away HBO Max? Do you dislike it? Do you think, it's a monopoly? You know, just let me know in the comments. So yeah, so next up, before we get the NFL and NCAA football talk, because we got big games this weekend, both college and NFL, as we know, the college football playoffs, the positioning, the seeding, it's going to determine what happens in tomorrow's games. But we'll talk with the college football about Lane Kiffin. We all know it's been the hot topic this week. Him last weekend taking the LSU job. And, my personal thoughts on that is that this is not a surprise. This is who Lane is. He just goes every few years, he goes to a different place. He's that guy who files for divorce, then remarries. And then a few years later, he's tired of it, wants a divorce, then he goes to a new person and remarries. That's just him. Lane Kiffin's about Lane Kiffin. And it's a shame because Ole Miss is having the best year in forever in college football and had a real chance to really do some damage in the college football playoff, assuming that they get selected one of those 12 spots. But now, he's left for LSU, and it just shows you what kind of character this guy is. He's wanted to coach both Ole Miss in the playoffs and help LSU at the same time. And no, no way. Get the hell out of here. You left. You're leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU. Get out of here. That's speaking from an Ole Miss, from their standpoint. Why do we need you to coach our team? You made your decision. So again, this is his character. This is not a surprise what a creep this guy is. Lane cares about Lane. And I can tell you right now, in a few years, if things don't go right, and if there's more money on the horizon at another big school, and they're calling about Lane, he's going to pack the bags, put the house up for sale in Baton Rouge, and split again. So that's what he does. That's just the kind of guy he is. So you can't rely on him. For LSU, it's you get what you pay for. You better hope this guy wins a national title for you, or else this will be a bad signing, in my opinion. LSU's the bigger, more financially successful school. They got more money, more resources in Louisiana than Mississippi does. But, it's just a shame that, Ole Miss, the players, they're the ones that pay for this, that have to suffer because their coach, who didn't even bother to tell them the night before, that says, hey, by the way, I'm going to go to LSU. See ya. Didn't want to say anything to the players. Just, said, screw it. I'm out of here. I'm going to switch states, switch SEC teams, and then now I'm at LSU. And then he had the nerve to say, I still want to coach the team. No, get out of here. Get the hell out of here, Lane. you know, stay in your lane. No pun intended. So we'll see what happens there. And I'm sure if Ole Miss does get in the college football playoffs, there's going to be a lot of fans, not just the Ole Miss fans, but fans across college football who are going to root for the Rebels, in the playoffs, And wouldn't that be cool if Ole Miss does make it in and they run the table and win the national title without Lane coaching the team? That would be like the ultimate, like, fu to Lane Kiffin. That would be incredible. So, and I believe it's Pete Golding who I think is their defensive coordinator. He's going to take over as the permanent head coach for Ole Miss. So I wish, Pete the best of luck. Um, I wish LSU luck, but I don't wish Lane luck because I just don't like the guy. So that's my opinion on the Lane Kiffin situation. Again, he's just, he's probably going to be there a few years and then there'll be a big offer and he'll go there somewhere else. Why? Because that's what he does. That's what Lane Kiffin does. He just does it for him. What's best for Lane, not what's best for the university, but what's best for Lane Kiffin. So, spoke my piece on that. Now we can get into the NFL and college football games this weekend. Right now, we got one going on. Actually, I got to be careful here. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to get copyrighted, so I'm gonna do that all the time. I got to position the camera better, but yeah. So UNLV is playing Boise State tonight in the Mountain West Championship game. Right now it's 21-0 Boise State. They're just annihilating UNLV. And they played earlier in the year in Boise. Boise beat them, and looks like now they're poised to do that again. Now, if UNLV would have won this game, if they could, it's still not over. They have time to come back. They could still win this game. But having said that, if they don't win this game, the score holds up or Boise State leads the whole game. UNLV's out of any kind of playoff talk. Even if UNLV wins, I don't know if they would be able to get in anyway because of the schedule. Just not enough impressive wins. But still, for Dan Mullen's first year, it's done a phenomenal job. And, who knows? He may get a call. There's still openings at Memphis. And yeah, speaking of, there are other job openings too. John Summerall from Tulane going to Florida. Ryan Silverfield going from Memphis to Arkansas. I think that's a good hire for the Razorbacks. So yeah, and then Alex Golesh, the USF South Florida head coach, going up to Auburn. That's a good hire as well. Alex Golesh is a very good up and coming coach. South Florida down in Tampa. He's made that a football school again. So, kudos to him. Sucks for South Florida, but Alex Golesh now has the opportunity to turn around an Auburn program that's been struggling the last several years. They used to be one of the top SEC teams, for the last 20 years, in the 2000s, 2010s. But it seems like this decade, it's been a different story. So, hopefully for Auburn fans, Alex Goulash can get the job done and make them a top team in the SEC again. We'll see. So, with the college football, playoffs tomorrow, we got games going on. Obviously, the big game is Ohio State and Indiana. The game I've been waiting for that I've wanted. Both teams undefeated. Heading into this thing in Indianapolis, it's going to be pretty much kind of a home game for the Hoosiers. They're in Indy at the Lucas Oil Stadium. But there'll be a lot of Ohio State fans as well. But it should be a very fun matchup. But before I dive into any further, I got a comment in here. Tampa Bay Rays fan 2008. Thanks, Tampa Bay Rays fan. Tune in tonight. How you doing? Norvell still has a job. What the? Yeah, he does. But that's not a surprise. I mean, I could give you 58 million reasons why he still has a job there. Simple. They don't want to pay the buyout, so we're stuck with him, and you know we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't expect it to get any better. Um, he Florida State came in today at this National Signing Day. By the way, we had the 14th uh, ranking as far as the signing class goes. This used to be a team that was in the top 10, maybe top 5 several years ago. Now it's gone to 14th. So it just shows you how far down FSU has gone down the last several years. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But yeah, back to the Ohio State Indiana game. A couple of great quarterbacks, Julian Sand for Ohio State. And we all know Francisco Mendoza, one of the favorites to win the Heisman for Indiana. It's going to be a fun matchup. Again, I would say, you know, that Mendoza has the advantage at quarterback, more experience. But Sand's not bad. I think Julian Sand has the better weapons with Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, at the receivers. I mean, Ohio State's the university of wide receiver, NFL wide receivers anyway. Those guys will be playing on Sunday. But I think what makes, and Indiana's got some good, offensive players too. Roman Hamby, the running back, and then Elijah Sherritt, for the Hoosiers, good wide receiver. But I think what the advantage is going to be in this game is the defense. And I think Ohio State's a better defensive team. Indiana's good too, but Caleb Downs is probably one of the best safeties in college football. Along with Sonny Styles, probably the best linebacker in college football. That's what I think is going to be the key in this game. Which defense is going to make the stop? It's going to slow down both the run game and the passing game. And I think Ohio State has the advantage in that spot because they're just great all around. Talent all around, well coached. So this is a game where I'm going to go Ohio State in this game. I think it'll be close. But again, Ohio State's just too good. Indiana's good too, and they had a big win at Oregon, so they know how to play in big time matchups. But I'm going to give the edge to Ohio State. I think they're going to win that game. I just like their team a little bit better in this kind of game. Not a knock against Indiana. I think they're great. They got the advantage at quarterback, but I like Ohio State's, on both sides of the ball. I think that's who's going to win the game. So, and then Mendoza top 5 first round pick versus Sand 27 first round pick. Yeah. Julian Sand's going to get better too. I like both these guys. They're both going to play on Sundays in the near future. And Indiana has wide receiver Cooper as well. Yeah, he's a good one. So yeah, I mean, both teams have great offenses. Both teams have great defenses. I just think Ohio State has the better playmakers on defense that can get the job done to win this game on Saturday night. And of course, you got Georgia, Alabama, Ty Simpson, Gunnar Stockton. I think that's going to be a great game to watch. I would say I'd give the advantage to Georgia. I think defensively they're phenomenal. Stockton, I think, is a better quarterback, makes, better plays, takes care of the football better than Ty Simpson does. So we'll see how that plays out. So we got great games tomorrow. This is going to be fun. I'm going to go Georgia in that game over Alabama. But I do think Alabama has to win this game if they're going to make the playoffs. If they lose this game, I think they're out of it. So very important for Alabama to, win this game. And then they should do that. They'll be in the playoffs. If not, then I think they're out. Because that would be 3 losses, and that would be tough to get in my opinion. I believe Styles' father played for the Falcons in the mid-90s. Oh, okay. Sonny Styles. Yeah. Okay. Oh, good job, Tampa Bay Rays fan. That's good to know. So, yeah, I guess the bloodlines are flowing in that family. So, yeah, Sonny Styles is going to be playing on Sundays. Whoever gets him in that defense, whichever NFL team ends up landing him, he's a stud, So yeah, he'll. Wouldn't it be ironic if the Falcons drafted him? That would be something. And oh yeah, Lorenzo Styles. There you go. I've heard of that name. Heard of that name. Nice. Um, we got other games too. BYU, Texas Tech. That's the early matchup. Rumors that BYU's head coach was being courted by Penn State, and now that's Penn State's refocusing on another guy, Matt Campbell from Iowa State. They said that's pretty much a done deal. They're just working on the final contract. Um, as far as the money and the years on it. So it looked like Matt Campbell, Iowa State head coach, is going to go to College Park. No, not College Park. State College. Sorry about that. Be the next Penn State head coach. So, but yeah, both teams are really good. BYU, Texas Tech. I'm going to go BYU in this game. I think they're going to be. They win, they're in. And what's funny is, the ACC title game is going to be Duke against Virginia. And that could determine a lot of things here. Because if Duke actually wins that game, it could push out a lot of teams. It could. Oh, because Duke's not going to get it, even if they win the ACC championship game. They're not getting it. Probably not Virginia either. So this is going to be a very unique situation here. And it'll be quite a selection process late Saturday night, early Sunday morning to see who gets those 12 spots. Could that affect Miami? Teams like Notre Dame, could that, hurt them ultimately? Because, you look at Notre Dame, their losses were Miami and Texas Tech or Texas A&M. But Notre Dame's wins, they don't really have a big win. Miami did beat them. That's their big win against Notre Dame. But who else did Miami beat? They lost to teams like SMU, Louisville. So it's going to be, I don't know if an ACC team is going to get into the college football playoffs. I really don't. Does Notre Dame get in? I think Notre Dame's playing the best football right now. And even though I can't stand them, I got to be honest. I think Notre Dame's, CJ Carr's really balling out in that defense as well. As just, Jeremiah Love, he's a baller, the running back from Notre Dame. I mean, they've just been lighting it up. There's a chance they might not make it. I would put them in because I think they've done well enough, but who knows how that's going to play out tomorrow. So, or on Sunday, whenever the selection is. It's on Sunday morning. So we'll see how it plays out. It depends on the games tomorrow night, how they shape. We all know Ohio State, Indiana is going to be in. Georgia, they're going to be in, win or lose. Alabama, question mark. They got to win. If they don't, then I don't know. So, did James Franklin got hired again? Yeah, Virginia Tech hired him a few weeks ago. So that's a great move. By the way, Virginia Tech, that's a good one. Getting James Franklin. He's a very good recruiter. He's built up programs before. He started at Vanderbilt. Then he went to Penn State when they had that tough situation with the whole Paterno, Sandusky stuff. That's when Bill O'Brien came along, and Bill O'Brien just suddenly left for the NFL. And then they brought in James Franklin. He turned it around. Say what you want about his record against top 10 teams. It's not great. But the one thing he's done very well is build, programs back up. And I think Virginia Tech's going to, benefit from James Franklin. He's going to recruit well down there in the DMV. He's going to make that team formidable again within the next couple years. So it was a great hire for them. Yeah, so man, that's Saturday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. Then we got the NFL games on Sunday. We all know Buccaneers. We got the New Orleans Saints. That's a division game. Those games can go anywhere. That is true. Tampa Bay. Notre Dame is offensive line university. I would say if you're going to get offensive linemen, go to the Big Ten, Notre Dame. You know that's where you get your beef at. You know, draft up there. So um, but yeah, so the NFL is Sunday. We got the Bucks and the Saints, big game, obviously. Uh, Mike Evans and even though Evans and McMillan practiced this week, 21-day window opened up for both of them. They have been ruled out for this week, and I'm okay with that because you want to make sure Mike's 100%. You know, in the Atlanta game, I mean, the Saints game is important as well. It's a division game. But you know, Atlanta's the Thursday night game after this game, so you give Mike a few extra days to rest, um, and get him ready for that game. We got 4 games left after this. The Falcons, Carolina, Miami, Carolina, and Carolina's nipping our heels right now. So get Mike ready for the most important games. That'll give Baker his top weapon back, and we got Bucky back. So getting Mike back and Godwin and Ibuka should be the offense should be fine. And I will say that I'm agreeing with you, Edgar. I mean Tampa Bay Rays fans. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Special teams coverage still worries me. Yeah, it does. It does. We're giving up too many yards on punt and kickoff returns. Um, you know, we cannot give up that much valuable field position now. We're going up against, Tyler Shogue, quarterback. I don't know if Kamara's playing or not. They're not a great team. The Bucks should handle their business here. But again, division games kind of worry you a little bit because, these are games where, like the Saints, Carolina, Atlanta are going to play their best. They want to beat the top team in the NFC South, which is the Bucks. So we'll see how that plays out. But I expect the Bucks to win this game, and get back to trying to wrap this division up. Like I said, Carolina's nipping at our heels. They have a bye week this week, and then they play us after that. So, or I think no, they got one more game before the Bucks. But again, we'll see how we'll see what's going on. Bucks run game will be decent. Yeah, with Bucky, Rashad White, Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker needs to play a little more. I know Bucky was back, but still got to integrate Sean Tucker into the game plan. Get all those 3 guys, use all your weapons. Make that offense lethal against defenses. How did Wirfs get hurt again? I don't know. He didn't practice all week, that's why he's listed as questionable for the game. So I'm not sure. I have to look into it, but yeah, that's not good. And it's been like this all year with Tristan Wirfs. I mean, he's still one of the best linemen in the game, but injuries have really affected him. And oh man, you want him to be healthy. That's I think out of everybody, he's the one guy you want more healthy than anybody. You got to have him protect Baker's blind side. God forbid we lose him, and we get into the postseason and we don't have him. That would be devastating. We can't be playing musical chairs with our offensive linemen. Although Michael Jordan, the GOAT. No, that's his name. Actually, he's done pretty well. When he's gotten in the lineup. So, we got Gadecki back a couple games ago, but still, you want to have Wirfs out there. He's your guy. Along with Barton and Cody Mock. God forbid we lose Wirfs at any time. Especially this time of year where it's coming down to the last few weeks and the playoffs start. So hopefully it's not serious. Hopefully he is listed as questionable. I assume he's going to play. So that's what I'm banking on. And if he does play, great. Mock is hurt too. Yeah. Yeah, not the time of year we need these injuries. That's for sure. Um, some other interesting games going on this weekend. The Ravens and Steelers. That's a that's a big game as well in the AFC North. Uh, I like Baltimore in this game. Lamar Jackson, I know he's been up and down all year, but the defense for Baltimore's done enough to win these games for the struggling Ravens offense. Steelers, meanwhile, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you know, he's 42. He's not looking like the guy from um, back in the old days with the Packers. You know, the run game hasn't been good for the Steelers. Jalen Warren hasn't played great. TJ Watt, he limped off the field at the end of the game against Buffalo last week. You wonder if he's going to be 100%. So I expect the Ravens to win that game. They should anyway. Dan Feeney's been average since coming to Tampa. Yeah, I agree. Cincinnati, Buffalo. Joe Burrow's back. He had a great performance against the Ravens on Thanksgiving. Buffalo, they have a lot of injuries as well. Joey Bosa's out. A couple other players are going to be out for that game. I forget who they were, but they got a lot of injuries. And, the Bills haven't played great lately. They got by Pittsburgh last week, but, both teams haven't played well. So it should be very interesting. And also, Packers and Bears, that's probably the game of the week, in my opinion. No Roma Duze on Sunday. He hadn't practiced all week. I think it's a foot injury. So that's a loss. That's a big loss for him offensively. But they've been running the ball really well. So I expect them to do the same thing. Green Bay does give up a lot of rushing yards. But I guess that's the price you pay when you trade Kenny Clark for Micah Parsons. Um, so and Jordan Love's got to play well. Bears defense has been phenomenal all year long. Josh Jacobs, he just came back last week. So that's going to help Green Bay's offense, but this is a tough game to call. I don't know who to pick in this game. I'm probably going to go Green Bay because I do think not having Roma Duze is a huge loss, in the receiving core for Chicago, but it should be a hell of a game. It really should be. Then you got the Texans and Chiefs Sunday night. Houston's been on a roll lately. Defensively, they're one of the best teams in football. Actually, statistic-wise, they are the best team in football on the defensive side. KC, they're getting old. Defensively, Chris Jones isn't getting to the quarterback like he used to. The secondary's very questionable. If CJ Stroud gets time in the pocket, he can attack that secondary and really give Kansas City's defense fits all game. But Kareem Hunt's got to play well. He's got to run the ball. And then for Houston, just make Mahomes' life a living hell. You're not going to sack him every time. He'll make plays, but Kansas City's looking old, and this could be the end of the run. I think if KC loses this game tomorrow night or on Sunday night, they're done. If Houston, they got to win too. They're trying to keep pace with Jacksonville and in the wild card hunt. Jacksonville has Indy this weekend, which that's a big game for Indianapolis. And I hate to say it, but I think Jacksonville's going to win that game. Not just because they've won, I think like 7 or 8 in a row in Jacksonville when the Colts haven't won there like since 2014. So it'd be about 10 years since they've last won a game there. So, Daniel Jones, I think he's got a foot injury he's dealing with currently. And they haven't been the same. Offensively, they've been slowing down. Jonathan Taylor hasn't been running the ball as well. So, this is a big game for the Colts, man. If Jacksonville wins this game, I think they win the division. and you know, and puts a lot of pressure on the Colts. That AFC, it's wide open. So big game for both those teams. And obviously, I mentioned the Monday night game, Philly and Chargers. I'll take Philly. I just think the Chargers have a lot of injuries right now, especially offensively. So Philly's defense, even though they don't have Jalen Carter, I think they're going to do enough to beat the Chargers in LA and take command of that NFC East. So those are, I guess you could say, those are my picks for the week. I do have one upset this week. I'm going to go Jets over the Dolphins. The Jets have been playing really well lately, the last few games. I know it's been a bad year, but Aaron Glenn's, starting to get that team turned around. And, defensively, they've been a lot better. Tyrod Taylor, ever since he came in for Justin Fields, the offense looks a lot better. They're taking more chances. They're throwing the ball more. Brees Hall's, been playing really good. And Miami, they've been on a winning streak, but the weather's colder and Tua doesn't play well in bad and cold weather, and it's supposed to be really cold there this weekend. So if I have an upset this weekend, that would be my upset pick: Jets over the Dolphins. So yeah, well, that's pretty much all I got for this episode of Have At It. I'm gonna finish watching this Boise State UNLV game. It's 28-7 now. Boise State, they're just taking full command of this game against UNLV, and not even halftime yet. It's a real shame because I thought UNLV would at least make this a game. Kettle Landry, their quarterback, has been playing really well this year for them. But in this game, it looks like Jalen Bradley had a fumble earlier on. He caught a lariat, threw a nice pass to Jaden Bradley, got hit, fumbled it, and Boise State took advantage of it, and they've just been rolling over UNLV ever since. So UNLV is going to have to really come out strong in the second half. They're going to have a chance to come back and win this game tonight. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have for this episode of Have At It. I'm ready for this weekend. We got a lot of great games, both college football and NFL. As I mentioned, I'm going Ohio State over Indiana. I'm going Georgia over Alabama. I got BYU over Texas Tech. And then Sunday, I got the Bucks over the Saints, Ravens over the Steelers, Eagles over the Chargers Monday night. And then my upset pick, the Dolphins or the Jets over the Dolphins. So anyway, with that being said, everybody, enjoy your college and NFL weekend, and I will see you next time right here on Have At It. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.